Hey everybody, I'm Tim Mooney. I am back with Shakespeare's Dirty Jokes. This is going to be the final breakneck Twelfth Night discussion as we finish up with all of Act 5 of Twelfth Night. Over the last 3 months, we've uploaded 13 episodes of Shakespeare's Dirty Jokes. Actually, there are a total of 14. I got the idea for the series as I was driving to perform the world premiere of Breakneck Twelfth Night at the Kansas City Fringe Festival. On my way, I videotaped an introduction to the show with a teaser of the show's preface. Anyway, you can find that video here if you want to go back and watch the series from the actual beginning. It was that video that gave me the idea to launch this full series for all of you dirty-minded viewers out there. Anyway, we're going to bid the 12th night season of this series farewell with a look at the final act. All of the earlier acts had more than one scene, but this act has only one scene in it. The same thing is true for Shakespeare's Comedy of Errors, Act 5, one scene. It's as if Shakespeare has worked his way through the first 4 acts, gradually winding them up like a clock, with incidents spread out over time and space, and with all of those preliminaries ratcheting up the tension, he just lets it all play out with no interruption. Once again, the scene opens with Feste brimming with some of the play's cleverest jokes. Duke Orsino finally comes to visit Olivia along with Viola, who is pretending to be Cesario, and recognizes Feste. Again, we suspect that Feste is double dipping. No, that's not a dirty joke. He's just working for both Olivia and Orsino while picking up tips along the way. Feste turns Orsino's casual conversation into a hilarious discussion of whether one is better served by one's friends or enemies, concluding that he is better thanks to his enemies, if only because his friends flatter him while his enemies call him an ass, and thereby he profits in the knowledge of himself. Orsino tips him while suggesting that if he brings Olivia back out with him, it may awake my bounty further. Feste immediately responds, "Let your bounty take a nap, I will awake it anon." Antonio, the sailor, is escorted in by officers who have arrested him for a past attack made upon Orsino's ship at sea. Antonio denies being a pirate and admits to wandering into Illyria in the company of Sebastian, who he assumes is standing right there beside Orsino, who we, of course, know is Sebastian's twin sister Viola, disguised as Cesario. Orsino and Antonio realize that their stories overlap far too much for both of them to have known Cesario/Sebastian for the last 3 months. For the moment at least, Orsino simply assumes that Antonio is mad or lying. It is worth noting that Antonio describes the time that he has spent with Sebastian as keeping company, which is a phrase that was, in more puritanical times, used as a euphemism for being in an intimate relationship, especially when such a relationship lies outside the traditional roles of intimacy, if you know what I mean. It is also worth noting that some of the threads of the plot seem to be hanging loose here. In the previous scene, Viola already heard Antonio inadvertently call her Sebastian, and she never asks the obvious question of whether Antonio thought she was her brother. Also, Antonio insists that he has only arrived in Illyria today. But that would mean that everything since Act 3, Scene 1, all happened in a single day. In order for that to be true, almost the entirety of those 3 months would have zoomed past between Act 1, Scene 4 and Act 3, Scene 1. Yes, this timeline could be accurate, but it is starting to feel like Shakespeare is speeding us up and slowing us down based on his impulsive needs of the moment. Olivia enters, ignoring Count Orsino to address Cesario, whom she assumes is her newly betrothed husband, and Orsino surprises us by accusing Viola of being the instrument that screws me from my true place in your favor. This is a fascinating use of the word screws, which in our modern vernacular is often used as a less vulgar variation of the F word, and also a variation of cheats, as when used in the phrase screws over. Both interpretations are possible in the way that Orsino reacts, and with enough bitter anger behind it, it lands with a pretty sharp shock. Viola has no idea that Olivia has become betrothed to her brother, though she does now have enough information to suspect it. She swears her true love, supposedly platonic love, for her master again, though only the audience knows that he is a she and that hers is a romantic desire. Olivia sends another servant off to fetch the priest and shockingly calls Viola husband. This stops Orsino and Viola dead in their tracks, and when the priest arrives to confirm all of the details of their betrothal, Orsino furiously throws Viola back at Olivia, perhaps all the more heartbroken over not only the loss of Olivia, his hoped-for lover, but by the betrayal of the servant to whom he had become strangely attached. This skirmish is interrupted by Sir Andrew and Sir Toby, who seem to have gotten into another fight with the imagined Cesario, who has beaten both of them badly. And this is another point of confusion amid Shakespeare's haste to resolve the plot. In the previous scene, Sebastian smacked Andrew around, but not Sir Toby. But now, Andrew and Toby have both been badly beaten by Sebastian. We kind of have to assume this is a second beating of Andrew and Toby, and yet Andrew is insisting that we took him for a coward, which is how the last scene played out. But if this is a fresh attack, then they would have already known Cesario was more than the effeminate coward they'd assumed. And here we stumble across one joke that whips by so quickly very few in the audience ever seem to get it. Andrew calls Cesario a very devil incarnate. It's fairly clear that Andrew meant to say a devil incarnate, which would mean a devil in human form, but incarnate is a description of the elevation of a cleric to a higher rank, such as a cardinal. Not really a dirty joke, it's mostly a mockery of how stupid Andrew can be. But once again, a wicked confusion between a holy ceremony and a satanic figure. Finally, Sebastian enters, and he and Viola are on the stage at the same time. Everyone on the stage starts to do the math on the confusion that has dogged them all this time. Even so, the twins are reluctant to acknowledge their good fortune and must examine every detail of their common story before they can allow themselves to celebrate. Viola puts off their happy embrace until she manages to change out of her masculine attire. And here I think we find the joke, or at least the lesson, that Shakespeare has been angling to all this while. Viola can't celebrate what she knows to be true until she is dressed as the woman she confirms herself to be. Orsino, realizing all at once that the boy who loved him is really the girl who loved him, cannot bring himself to express his love until he sees her in her woman's weeds. What is so profound about this moment is that each of these know that their long quest for their loves and relations have been fully resolved. But they deny themselves the fulfillment of all those desires, all because Viola is wearing the clothing of the wrong sex. They are denying their own happiness because of the outer guise, despite having found the real person. Orsino is filled with desire for Viola, and maybe he even finds Viola a little too exciting in her male garb to acknowledge it without losing some of his manly pride. And it feels like a really kinky joke when he looks at her in the fullness of his desire only to say, "Let me see thee in thy woman's weeds." More plot. Viola's woman's weeds have been left with the captain, who has somehow gotten thrown into prison by Malvolio, who has never been on the stage with the captain, nor have we any previous awareness of any such interchange. But we don't have time to think about it too much, as Malvolio is brought back on stage, now a broken man, still hoping pathetically that the truth of the letter will confirm Olivia's love, only to find himself denied by Olivia and faced with the full realization of just how badly he has been abused by Maria and Toby and even the fool. Festi, the fool, rubs his nose in it a bit as he reworks that same bit of flattery that became the source of Malvolio's erotic fixations and grandiose fantasies. Not to confuse this any more than it is, but our pedantic Shakespeare hair splitters out there will know that Feste's final summation is mostly delivered by the character of Fabian, who does not appear in our breakneck version of this play. The way Fabian advances the plot would have demanded more character explanation than he was worth, when one of our favorite characters, Feste, was available to execute enough of Fabian's lines to make sense of it all. And personally, I tend to think that Shakespeare may have envisioned these two characters as one, but perhaps had a couple of plot points that could be resolved more easily with an extra body on stage. Amid this final flurry, we get the added detail that Sir Toby went ahead and married Maria. The irony here is that Malvolio had hoped to achieve the great servant's dream himself through his fantasies of a romantic and sexual relationship with the Countess Olivia, and yet the lowly handmaid Maria has fulfilled that very dream herself, marrying the knight Sir Toby, which cannot help but make Malvolio all the more humiliated and miserable and longing for revenge. As such, Shakespeare leaves us with the most non-happy ending to any of his comedies, as no matter what, this plot point will never be resolved before the curtain falls. And yet we cannot deny that there is something wickedly satisfying about the lack of redemption for the puritanical Malvolio. And so Shakespeare plays us off with one final song from what may be, by now, our favorite character, Feste the Fool. Now that I've beaten all those wonderful jokes to death, here's Act 5 of Breakneck Twelfth Night. Act 5. Time has passed. We don't know where it has gone, but somehow 3 months have sailed by. I know, it feels like it's been maybe a week. Shakespeare apparently needed to squeeze in some extra circumstances. And finally, Orsino comes with Viola to visit Olivia's house himself, encountering Feste. Belong you to the Lady Olivia, friend? Aye, sir, I am one of her trappings. I know thee well. How dost thou, my good fellow? Truly, sir, the better for me foes and the worse for me friends. Just the opposite, the better for thy friends. No, sir, they praise me and make an ass of me. Now, me foes tell me plainly I am an ass, so that by me foes, sir, I profit in the knowledge of myself, while by my friends I am abused. So, if your 4 negatives make your 2 affirmatives, why then, the worse for me friends and the better for me foes. Aye, this is excellent. By my troth, sir, no. Though it please you to be one of my friends, thou shalt not be the worse for me. There's gold. If you will tell your lady I am here to speak with her and bring her along with you, it may awake my bounty further. Truly, sir, let your bounty take a nap. I will awake it anon. Enter Antonio, escorted by officers. Here comes the man, sir, that did rescue me. That face of his do I remember well, yet then it was besmeared with smoke of war. He did me kindness, sir, drew on my side. Notorious pirate, thou saltwater thief, what foolish boldness brought thee to thine enemies? Orsino, noble sir, I do shake off these names you give me. Antonio never yet was thief or pirate. A witchcraft drew me hither, that most ingrateful boy there by your side, from the rude sea did I redeem into the dangers of this adverse town. When came he to this town? Today, my lord, and for 3 months before, both day and night, did we keep company. Fellow, thy words are madness. 3 months this youth hath tended upon me. Enter Olivia. Cesario, you do not keep promise with me. Madam, what do you say, Cesario? My lord would speak. My duty hushes me. The old tune, my lord, it is fat and fulsome to mine ear. Still so cruel, still so constant, lord. Well, hear this. I partly know the instrument that screws me from my true place in your favor. This minion, whom I know you love, and whom I tender dearly, I'll sacrifice the lamb that I do love, to spite a raven's heart within a dove. And I, to do you rest, 1,000 deaths would die. Where goes Cesario? With him I love. More than mine eyes, more than my life, more and more than e'er I shall love wife. Hast thou forgot thyself? Is it so long? Go, call the Holy Father. Husband, stay. Husband? Aye, husband, can he that deny?
Her husband, sir, no, my lord, not I. Enter the priest. O welcome, father, by your reverence, unfold what hath passed between this youth and me. A contract of eternal bond of love, confirmed by mutual joinder of your hands, attested by the holy close of lips and interchangement of your rings, sealed in my function since but 2 hours. Oh, thou dissembling cub, farewell and take her, but direct thy feet where thou and I henceforth shall never meet. Enter Sir Andrew, who has once again picked on the wrong twin, as Cesario has turned back into a bully, badly beating himself and Sir Toby. We took him for a coward, but he's the very devil incarnate. Here he is. You broke my head for nothing. You drew your sword upon me without cause, but I bespoke you fair and hurt you not. Enter Sir Toby, once again drunk, incoherent, and now in need of a surgeon. That soul one has hurt me, and there's the end on't. Sot! Did see Dick Surgeon? Sot! He's a rogue. I hate a drunken rogue. Olivia sends him off. Get him to bed and let his hurt be looked to. Enter Sebastian. I am sorry, madam, I have hurt your kinsman, but had it been my brother, I'd have done no less. You throw a strange regard upon me. Pardon me, sweet one, even for those vows we gave each other but so late ago. One face, one voice, one habit, and 2 persons. One that is and that is not. Antonio, oh my dear Antonio, how have the hours tortured me since I have lost thee. Sebastian, do you make division of yourself? An apple cleft in 2 was not more twin. Which is Sebastian? Do I stand there? I never had a brother. I had a sister, whom the blind waves have devoured. What kin are you to me? What parentage? From Messily, Sebastian was my father. Such a Sebastian was my brother too. Were you a woman, I should my tears that fall upon your cheek and say, thrice welcome, drowned Viola. My father had a mole upon his brow, and so had mine. If nothing less, to make us happy both, but this my masculine attire, do not embrace me till each circumstance do cohere. I am Viola. So comes it, madam, you have been mistook. You would have been contracted to a maid. You are betrothed both to a maid and man. Boy, 1,000 times thou hast told me thou never shouldst love woman like to me. And all those sayings will I overswear, and all those swearings will I keep. Let me see thee in thy woman's weeds. Unfortunately, Viola's woman's weeds, i.e. her lady clothes, were left in possession of the captain, who we have not seen since Act 1. And somehow, Malvolio got the captain thrown into prison. It's quite possible Shakespeare wrote more scenes with the captain and or Malvolio that never made it into the final draft. Also likely he just needed some excuse to fetch Malvolio back onto the stage from his dark, dank, dirty dungeon. Madame, thou hast done me notorious wrong. Pray to peruse that letter. Well, you must not now declare 'tis not your hand, nor say 'tis not your seal, nor your invention. Well, tell me, why hast thou given me such clear lights of favor? Why hast thou suffered me to be imprisoned, kept in a dark house, visited by the priest, and made the most notorious geck and gull that e'er invention played on? Tell me why. Alas, Malvolio, this is not my writing, though now I do bethink me, 'twas Maria first told me thou wast mad. Amid this confusion, Festi is the only one left on stage who can pull together the remaining threads of the plot. Good madam, hear me speak, and let no quarrel taint this present hour. Most freely I confess, myself and Toby set this device against Malvolio here. Maria writ the letter at Sir Toby's great importance, in recompense whereof he hath married her. I know, some are born great, some achieve greatness, and some have greatness thrown upon them. I was one, sir, in this interlude, one Sir Topus, sir. Do you remember? By the Lord, fool, I am not mad. But that's all one, and thus the whirligig of time brings in his revenges. Malvolio exits, but not without first fucking up everybody's happy ending. I'll be revenged on the whole pack of you. Pursue him and entreat him to a peace. Cesario, come, for so thou shalt be while you are a man. But when in other habits you are seen, Orsino's mistress and his fancy's queen. Exit all but festy. When I was but a little tiny boy with hey-ho, the wind and the rain, a foolish thing was but a toy, for the rain it raineth every day. But when I came to a man's estate with hey-ho, the wind and the rain, 'gainst knaves and thieves men shut their gate, for the rain it raineth every day. But when I came, alas, to wive with hey-ho, the wind and the rain, with swaggering could I never thrive, for the rain it raineth every day. A great while ago the world begun with hey-ho, the wind and the rain. But that's all one, our play is done, and we'll strive to please you every day.
And so that wraps up our collection of the dirty jokes of Shakespeare's most dirty play. I hope you've enjoyed them. I continue to work my way through all of Shakespeare's catalog, breakneck style, and I expect I'm not done stumbling across dirty jokes in pretty much every play I encounter. I don't expect I'll come across a play quite so chock full as this one is, but when I find something worth exploring, I'll be sure to jump back on this site and tell you all about it. I've started to work on Breakneck King Lear now, and yes, it too has a seamy underbelly all its own. Please subscribe and hit that notification bell so you'll be alerted when we've got more to share. Once more, I'm Tim Mooney with the Timothy Mooney Repertory Theater, and I bring these breakneck shows to theaters around the United States. I would love to come and perform for you and your school or group. You can also find my work online at timmooneyRep.com with full video performances at breakneckshakespeare.com. Finally, if you see the value of getting students interested in Shakespeare by way of the naughty parts, you can support these many explainer videos and our performance tours at patreon.com/timmooneyRep. See you on the stage.